Our top story this hour, US President Joe Biden's administration has announced support for a global waiver on patent protections for COVID-19 vaccines. US State Representative Catherine Tai has said in a statement that while intellectual property rights for businesses are important, Washington supports the waiver in order to end the pandemic. US State Representative has said that the negotiations will of course take time and the aim is to get as many safe and effective vaccines to as many people as fast as possible. Vaccine supplies for Americans have been taken care of. The Biden administration will now continue efforts to expand vaccine manufacturing and distribution. It will also work to increase the raw materials needed to produce vaccines. And the decision offers hope to developing nations that have struggled to get access to life-saving drugs amid the pandemic. Biden has been under intense pressure to waive patent protections for vaccine manufacturers. Rich nations have been criticized for hoarding the vaccines, thereby not leaving any for the developing nations. More than 1.2 billion doses have been administered globally, but fewer than 1% have been given to people in the developing countries. Vaccine shortage is not an issue in the United States. The country is sitting on a 300 million extra doses we're talking here, which is nearly equivalent to its entire population. Now, World Health Organization Director General Tedros has called the decision historic and a monumental moment for the fight against COVID-19. For months now, the World Trade Organization has been facing calls to temporarily remove the intellectual property protections on COVID-19 vaccines. WTO chief described it as a moral and economic issue of our time. However, of course, pharmaceutical giants are fairly opposed to this decision. They insist that patents are not the main roadblocks to scaling up production. They have warned that the move could hamper innovation. The International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers and Association says, as we have consistently stated, a waiver is simple but the wrong answer to what is a complex problem. Remember, as the world deals with lethal variants of the COVID-19, vaccine inequality has only added to this problem. The pandemic has claimed more than 3.2 million lives worldwide since it first emerged in late 2019. Many wealthy nations have made progress in suppressing the virus as mass vaccination campaigns gather pace. However, developing countries are still dealing with virus mutations, inadequate number of vaccines and crumbling health infrastructure. And a WION correspondent Rachel Silverman is joining us live from San Francisco. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Joe Biden's administration has announced support for a global waiver. And this could you just tell us about the practical implications of this move now?
Right. So the announcement came just hours after the WTO Director General spoke to a closed-door meeting of ambassadors from developing and developed countries that have been wrangling over the issue, but agree on the need for wider access to COVID-19 treatments. We don't know what was said, but clearly it was effective. The Biden administration saying it believes strongly in intellectual property protections, but in service of ending this pandemic, it's supporting the waiver of those protections for COVID-19 vaccines. This as the pace of vaccinating against COVID-19 in the U.S. is slowing down. And as you said, as the U.S. has an abundant supply, there are more doses here than people who want them. Advocates, of course, say the consequences of not passing the waiver are staggering, saying not only on the level of the loss of human lives, but also on the economic level.
Absolutely. As we know, the vaccine hoarding is now a problem in the midst of this pandemic. Now, pharmaceutical giants, of course, are fiercely opposed to this decision. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. There's a strong lobby from pharmaceutical companies who say the decision will compromise U.S. job creation, who say that it will compromise the country's place as a leader in biomedical innovation. Another complaint is they say that it will undermine incentives to develop vaccines and treatments for future pandemics. And they say it's dangerous to hand needy countries a recipe without handing them the ingredients or the staff in order to create the vaccines. That's their side of the issue.
All right. Okay, Rachel, thank you so much for all those details. Do stay with us. I will come back to you. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.